Hello Internet, and welcome to my live reaction for Black Butler, chapter 182. When we last left our heroes, Baldroy quickly got rid of the last two intruders who were almost to Ciel's room, quickly kills them. Ciel comes out, and Baldroy initially thinks Ciel is going to panic at the sight of dead bodies, but as we all know, Ciel is well accustomed to that. Baldroy learns that these intruders are a regular occurrence, and Sebastian reveals himself, and reveals that this was in part a test for Baldroy, that if the intruders had gotten to Ciel's room, Baldroy would have been fired. Sebastian, of course, would have easily taken care of them, as he reveals when Baldroy is mad that he risked his boss's life like that. But Baldroy is just sort of stunned at how accustomed to death everyone in this household is. And Sebastian explicitly requests for him to come on as a senior commander for the more inexperienced Mayrin and Finian. Once again, not a whole lot last month. There rarely is a whole lot going on in any one chapter. But let's dive right on into chapter 182, The Butler Questioning, which will hopefully maybe be the end of this flashback, please. I don't know. Our picture here is of Baldroy. I imagine this ties into his past and the kid we've been seeing, because it's him as like a farmhand or the head of a farm, a limitless land with endless freedom. He's like in overalls and very sort of, or suspenders. I mean, I don't think those are quite overalls, but very sort of 19th century farmer attire. Anyway, we open basically where a bit after we left off. Because last time, Sebastian told Baldroy to help clean up all the blood by morning. And we open with Finian and Sebastian. And Finian asks, do we really need to finish cleaning this place by morning? And Sebastian responds, of course. We cannot have our master walk on soiled ground. And Baldroy calls up to him, hey, Mr. Butler, I'll put this wheat back in the kitchen, okay? The flour that he had used to defend himself last time is what he's talking about. I was a little confused. And Sebastian presses, do you plan to serve your master food that fell on the floor? Dispose of them. The floor covered with blood, no less. So we're seeing again, the sort of conflict of worldviews between Sebastian and Baldroy. The sort of high society life, and Baldroy is sort of, he came from the war where you eat what you have, no matter how disgusting it is. Which again, for all my complaints about Butler, there is good character work here. It's just really, really minor compared to, what the story could be focusing on, I guess. But, they're well-defined characters. This just isn't particularly a dispute I care about, is the problem. Anyway, Baldroy notes, what a waste. You can eat the wheat that doesn't have blood in it. Do you have any idea how hard farmers work to make a handful of wheat? So that sort of goes up to what we see in this cover, that Baldroy has some farm history. Because I'm not quite familiar with crops to be able to tell what these crops are, especially in black and white. But those might be wheat. Given what Baldroy seems to know about wheat production, it might very well be wheat. Sebastian looks at him and then sort of presses, when we first met, you said, I've taken care of cows. Do you have experience with livestock and produce? And Baldroy stands up and sort of acknowledges that. Experience? I come from a family of farmers, so... And he picks up his pistol. I never imagined to make a living with this. And we get another flashback within the flashback. At a certain point, I think Yana might just be making fun of me at some point. When I was born, there was a gold rush boom in the United States. So that puts Baldroy's birth at, around 1849, I think. I'm not entirely sure that matters, but it's probably, the 1849 California gold rush he's talking about. The frontier spirit. Different principles and opinions, south and north. Grown-ups were fighting everywhere, for as long as I can remember. Yeah, also we see if he was born around 49, he'd be around an early teenager when the Civil War broke out, which would fit with that south and north. I'm going to see if we actually have a birthday for Baldroy, because we very well might. It might be hypothesizing over nothing. It doesn't quite say. The characteristics we have is species human, gender male, either 36 to 37 or around 40, which would put his birth around, because this flashback would be what, 2-ish years ago, so like 87. So if it's 36 to 37, it might have been right around 48, 49. I know I personally get really into dates sometimes, and I doubt most people care about the dates, but I'm like, this is like a mini puzzle for me. So I imagine he grew up in we see this poster of settlers fighting natives, and like what would say like out of an old western, but like it actually is the old west in this case. Kids wanted to grow up and be a gunfighter or a sheriff. Everyone had ambitions, and we cut to an even younger Baldroy on the farm, and a cow gets right up in his face and like licks him. And he sort of backs off. Yuck, you stink! All that had nothing to do with me. My great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather came to this country in search of freedom of religion or something. My ancestors didn't know what to do in the wild land full of forest. They received corn and beans from the natives, worked the land hard and settled here. Always remember our gratitude towards the natives. Those words were handed down from our ancestors. Okay. So let's take a look at that, because I was going to sort of, my lack of anything approaching even like decent knowledge of native, like I was skeptical of the idea that the natives were so happy to receive them, but I was going to not bring up anything because they didn't have a lot to say about that I could definitively prove or tie into the manga. But there is this bit here. Always remember our gratitude towards the natives. Those words were handed down from our ancestors. Given what else we know about Baldroy's backstory, that specifically Sebastian found him while he was fighting the natives, we'll see how all this plays out, is what I'm saying. I've been uncomfortable with just that aspect of Baldroy's story for a while, and we'll see. We'll just have to wait and see how all this plays out. Anyway, I believe this is the woman from Baldroy's personal flashbacks. Baldo, won't you exchange your wheat with our milk? Baldroy names her. Joanna. Sure, how much wheat do you want? And Joanna tells him, I have 3 gallons or so. I think that I have 3 gallons or so was a bit earlier than Baldroy's line. And Joanna just sort of brings out her milk. 124-pound bag. Baldroy reacts, Gah, you're asking for too much. Make it 15 pounds at most. And Joanna presses, don't be cheap. Our milk, oh boy, it's a lot sweeter and nutritious than other milk. Which, we have this close-up of her boobs. And I think part of that is just sort of Baldroy being into this girl. But that line being paired with the line about milk, it sure is a choice. It sure is a choice. Baldroy sort of reacts, kind of embarrassed, as he's sort of staring at her breasts. Sweet and full of nutrition? And that gets Joanna's ire. Hey, what are you looking at? I wasn't looking at them in a dirty way. Then how? And Baldroy says it might be the most awkward attempt at flirting I've seen in a long time. They're like round bread and look delicious. That's what I was thinking. That's still a dirty way. Telling someone their boobs look delicious is still dirty. I don't know how to tell you that, Baldroy, but it still is. Joanna reacts, like bread? And she blushes. And she says, if you're going to eat them, make sure there are no leftovers. Which just fully stuns Baldroy. He has no idea how to react. And Joanna runs off. See you. And Baldroy is just sort of stunned. And then we cut to him in like a tuxedo. Not quite familiar enough with mid-19th century wedding practices to know if that quite works, or if that's more it wouldn't quite feel like Yana to like throw in a modern anachronism there. But anyway, we're at a wedding with him and Joanna. We see Joanna pregnant, and it's like winter, and he's just like brought up this cradle for the baby. We see the baby born with like a midwife, and the whole family sort of spending time together. And then we see, so there's this weird thing where it looks like for a second he's back in his wedding attire, as he like wipes a tear from his eyes, and then cuts back to the farm, to his farm outfit. Because like when I see him back in the wedding attire, my first thought is that these last 3 panels have been a dream as he imagines his future life. But then we go right from there back to the farm attire. I'm not sure if that means anything at all, or what exactly. He thinks, I'll plow the fields all my life, like my ancestors did, and live an ordinary, and then sort of cut off. I imagine because maybe it's sort of a foreshadowing thing, or a pre-foreshadowing thing, in that he never gets that ordinary life. We know how his life ends up. And he sort of like rubs his back. There's so much to do in fall. And he's hit in the back of the head by like a tiny little like seed or tiny rock. And he turns back. You shot me right in the head. You must be a famous gunfighter. And it's the boy who we finally get confirmation is his son. Here comes Baldroy Jr. Ordinary. He carries on that earlier thought. Ordinary, happy life. And grow old here. And that's what I thought. Okay, so I will say, before I see this next panel, and I have a good idea what's right about to happen. I do want to spend a little bit of time. I love the whole, you know, the kind of game he plays with his son. It's cute. It's a quick little gag. I wish Yana was more adept at making things that should be short and sweet like that, short and sweet. She's good at it when she tries to be. But, you know, I'll take the little tiny characterization moments that we get. Anyway, we see him spending happy times with his son. That's what I thought. And we cut to a native attack on their village. And we see like the village on fire. Baldroy standing amidst the attack. Why? To be continued. That's just where we leave off. Okay. All right. So, let's take a look at this chapter. First of all, I do agree that at some point, given how much this flashback was sort of leaning into, you know, Baldroy thinking about his farming past, I imagine we get something like this eventually. I do wish it wasn't going to be a multi-chapter flashback within a multi-chapter flashback. Like, that's just... I've complained about Yana's pacing for the last, 3 years now. I've accepted that that's not going to change. 180 gave me something akin to hope. But I should know better than to have kept that hope up, I suppose. The stuff we get here isn't bad. It's really simple, is the thing. There's not a whole lot done here. I'm on Imgur, so the page count isn't really provided for me. I'm just making, count the pages real fast. Because I doubt it's more than, 12. Let's see. It's 11. It is 11 pages. And that just feels short even for Yana. Chapters are normally a good 15 or so, which I don't like that I'm now saying good 15 or so, but this was real short. And, it's one of those things where, a lot of the content in this hellishly paced arc, divorced of context, and saying this is only 11 pages, it's, not bad per se. It's just, we get 11 pages a month, and we're in a flashback within a flashback that's only tangentially related to the actual arc. It's things I've been saying for a long, long time, and it's just kind of ridiculous. Anyway, I'm going to talk briefly about the native attack. I'm going to save most of my thoughts until we get to see the brunt of it next month. But generally, I'm just not... I think I get what Yana's going for. You know, I don't think she's making any kind of blanket statement about Native Americans. I think she's playing off of Western tropes. The trope are of old Western films. Western the genre, not Western the West culture. I think that's what she's going for. I think the tropes she's aping largely... I think the problem is she's sort of playing off of tropes that were sketchy at best, let's say, when they were made 50 years ago, and they have not aged that well going into the 2020s, and she's not really engaging with them in an interesting way. It feels like she's just sort of playing them straight, and I'm not quite sure... I don't know. I mean, the culture, I imagine that Japanese relations to the Old West are very different than here in the States. And so I'm not entirely sure where I'm going with any of this. I'm not super on board with it, but I don't think it's really meant to be... I don't think it's meant to be saying anything. I think it's meant to be, look, it's just like one of those old Westerns, and not meant to be anything serious at all. I don't know. I'm still not the biggest... I'm not exactly a fan of it, though we'll see exactly how all this plays out next month. Anyway, my point being, for the chapter as a whole, there is the taste of good stuff here. And as always, it's a taste, which is almost more frustrating. You know, if Butler were just straight bad, I could drop it. The problem is that there is really good stuff here. It's just it's delivered so fucking slowly that it doesn't feel like you're ever getting any of that good stuff. I don't know. That's my point. There is the barest bones of... I mean, it's... For 11 pages, it's good, but 11 pages should not be a chapter, is my final point. That's my final statement on this chapter. So yeah, I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you'll enjoy the chapter and the video itself. If you did, feel free to drop me a like or subscribe, or, do whatever makes you happy, And as always, your life is your own, okay? Bye!